Today we gather to share words of praise, words of thanks, words of honor, and words of love, as we recall with great affection a beloved wife, a beloved mother, a beloved grandmother, a beloved great-grandmother, a beloved sister, a beloved aunt and friend, Elaine Reider, as we remember a wonderful woman who lived a long and beautiful life. We'll open with the chanting of Psalm 23, first in the Hebrew and then in the English. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo exar, Inotesh yarbitzeni, Ome menuchot yenahaleni, Nafshi yeshavev, Yancheni b'merglei tzedek leman shemo, Gam kelech b'geit samavet, Lo irarak yataimadi, Shivtecha mishantecha hemeyanaka muni, Tarok lefanai shocha, Neged tzorai dishanta b'shem enoshi koserevaya, Aktov v'chesed, Yirefuni koyamei chaya, V'shavte b'veit Adonai liorech yamim. If you want to join with me, Psalm 23 in the English, the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Our Bible teaches a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for planting and a time for reaping, a time for embracing and a time for refraining, a time for loving and a time for hating, a time for laughing and a time for weeping, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking, a time for silence, a time for seeking, and a time for losing. The rabbis often ask, which is the best time to celebrate a person, when they are born or when they are die? And the rabbis compare our lives to that of a ship. And I don't know if you've ever taken a cruise or on a big ship, and there's a lot of fanfare when that ship first leaves the harbor. You can imagine parades and balloons and celebration. The rabbis question, why are we celebrating when the ship leaves the port? Because no one knows what will be its plight, what obstacles, what challenges, what seas and storms lay in its path. The rabbis say when a ship returns home safely after a long journey, when it returns home to port, that is time to celebrate. And so we gather today to remember our beloved Elaine, who has departed from this world, but returned home to harbor in heaven, just a few weeks shy at the age of 98. Our beloved Elaine has left behind many in mourning, her two daughters, Sally and Kathy, and her husband, Jim, the apples of her eye, her grandchildren, Rob and Tracy, Phil and Jenny, Becky, Daniel and Minna, the diamonds in her crown, her great-grandchildren, Alex, Drew, Riley, Spencer, Sadie, Max, and Kyla, cherished nieces and nephews, and to her caregivers and aides, Grace and Colette, who treated Elaine like their own mother, and she considered you as family. Our beloved Elaine now joins her Howard, her beloved husband of 67 years, together once again in heaven. She joins her brother Robert and Barbara, parents Thelma and Philip Sobol, and so many others, all who have gone before her. She rejoins them all in their eternal home in heaven. At this point, there is a special family tribute. I call up Elaine's grandson, Phil, to share words.
So these past few days have been a mix of emotions and feelings, and sadness, obviously, think a little bit more as we get closer to saying goodbye. But as I was reflecting, the feeling that came to me more than anything was gratitude. First, at being able to have a grandmother for this long. Not a lot of people my age can say that they have a grandmother, and still. And she lived a wonderful life for the great majority of it. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the fact that she knew her great grandkids, my children, my niece and nephews, my first cousin's kids, and she got to know them all and watch them partially at least grow up. And I'm grateful for not just the quantity of time with her, but the quality of time. Just thinking back at some of the memories, dinner with grandparents, watching the Indians game, talking about other Cleveland sports teams, visits to Florida, of course, and just we often talk about the times that we're in Florida to this day. Robbie and I still laugh at certain things, and they're just really beautiful memories. I was trying to think of a story that I could share with everyone that would reflect my grandmother's personality, and the best one I could think of I actually have to borrow from my brother, so if I get it wrong you can correct me. But this must have been when he was a junior or senior in high school, and he as surprised as some of you might be, he actually cut school one day, and so he was with a bunch of his friends at the house, and he got busted. I think the school called my mom, and my mom called my grandmother, and she comes into the house, and it's like, everybody out, get back to school. And so she's clearing the house out, and right before Robbie gets ready to leave, she's like, wait, did you eat yet? I said, no. So well, sit down, let me make you something to eat. So obviously, her grandson eating lunch was priority over getting back to school. And that's who she was. I think it's accurate to say that my grandmother had a special and unique way of showing her family how she loved us, and she made it easy for us to love her back, which we do. I'm gonna miss my grandmother, but I know I'll be smiling every time I think of her. May her memory continue to always be a blessing. I love you, Grandma.
Thank you, Phil, for those beautiful words. The rabbis say the words that come from the heart enter our hearts. You really brought your grandma into all of our hearts. And when we sat as a family last night, we all joked about that. We all laughed about that story, so thank you. Elaine was a good neshama. She had a good soul. She was generous and kind, non-judgmental, never had a mean bone in her body. She lived for her family. You were always number one for her. She was a bit private and shy, not overly effusive, but you knew how much she loved you. Always dressed to the nines, fashionable, made up, beautifully dressed and groomed in a classic, understated way. She kept a clean house, a very clean house. In fact, cleaning the house was her daily exercise. She loved her grandchildren, and the greats were always invested and interested in your lives and family. Your photos were all over her home. And her second love outside of family was her love of Cleveland sports, baseball, basketball, and football. Her grandfather, Max Rosenblum, owned the early Cleveland basketball team. She had memories of seeing Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig at the old stadium. She knew a time when Cleveland teams regularly won. She was a worrier, like all Jewish mothers. She was protective, like that time Kathy recalls on the swing set at Hawthorne Club when Mom rushed in to protect you. She was all of your protector because Elaine loved her family above all else. Born and raised a Clevelander, Elaine grew up in Cleveland Heights, graduating from Heights High. Howard's sister had worked in Elaine's family store, and she was the one who helped set them up. He was in the Army at the time, stationed in Miami Beach. So when Elaine went down to Florida one time on vacation, they met And as we say, the rest is history. Corresponding back and forth by mail, they met in January. They were married by November. He proposed to her through the mail. And on November 1944, they pledged to love each other for the rest of their lives. Elaine was so in love with her Howard. She loved Dad so much. They had a wonderful, loving marriage, always social, going out, whether it was out at the club. They belonged to 4 of them, Hawthorne, Beachmont, and 2 different ones in Florida, or going out to dinner with friends or to the theater, wintering at West Palm Beach. Not a big traveler, although they did enjoy their cruises and that trip to the Panama Canal. Elaine always liked to be in her own home and to sleep in her own bed. Sally and Kathy, last night when we sat together, you shared stories of a terrific mother who loved her daughters unconditionally, who cooked for you every single night, whether it was spaghetti or chicken paprikash or prime rib or veal chops for Dad. You recalled those family trips to Niagara Falls or Wheeling, West Virginia, and of course down to Florida. A protective mother that was always there, that did everything for you, except let you get the dog that you wanted. An incredible grandmother. Grandma Elaine was the best. She loved you all so much, although there was a debate if Robbie, the first grandchild, got a little extra love. She really loved to kvel about all of you, to Brad. And when you visited, she'd show you off at the club. Then your grandfather would go out and play golf, and she'd be at the pool with you. Then you'd all go out to dinner at the Okeechobee Steakhouse or somewhere else. She'd take you to the fairgrounds when you were little. Always loved talking Cleveland sports with you. Danny, you would call Grandma after ball games to discuss the ins and outs of the game. The greats were simply great. What a blessing to have so many great grandchildren. Grandma Elaine loved each and every one of you so much. She even got to see Alex and Drew's baseball games. What a pleasure. You all made her so proud. You gave her so much nachas. Elaine loved watching movies, watching Judge Judy. She taped each week Saturday Night Live and made sure you watched it with her if you didn't see it. A fan of musical theater. As a child, her parents would take the family to New York City to see Broadway shows, including Oklahoma. She had tickets to the Kravitz Center and instilled a love of theater in her own daughters. Elaine had a great memory, always very sharp, played mahjong, not just a hobby, but probably a sport for her, twice a week for many, many years, and then raising the level to almost a daily ritual of mahjong for her. She was an avid reader. She was committed to community, a longtime member of Fairmount Temple and Temple Judea, a donor to the Federation, a member of National Council of Jewish Women. She was a good friend. She enjoyed her large circle of friends, a wonderful mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and aunt. Elaine was generous of heart. As you shared with me last night, if she loved you, she really loved you. At her 90th birthday party at Kathy's home, you celebrated Grandma. You made up special shirts with her photo. You encircled her that day with love, like you did every single day. And Sally, you showed me photos from that day. Mom had the biggest smile on her face, surrounded by all of you. You were her heart and soul. Her heart beat for you. And you made sure that it did. She always had the best of care. Elaine was the matriarch of this family until the end. Sally and Kathy, your loving devotion to Mom was more than first class. Always ensuring that Mom had the best care, always with dignity. And the family shares incredible gratitude to Grace and Colette for all of your care for Elaine. Elaine will be missed by family and friends. She's returned home in peace. Like the ship that has returned to the harbor, we can rejoice in her good name. 97 years and more than 11 months of love, of spirit, of smiles, of life, and of kindness. Our beloved Elaine has returned home to her Howard. We can truly say that they are together, and she is now at peace. May her name always bring blessings, and we say, Amen. At this point, we're going to pause as the casket is lowered. After the casket is lowered, we're going to place some earth on the casket and gather for closing prayers. In a ritual. Amikamot Avodah Shalom. May your righteous deeds go before you, and may you only be remembered with love.
Let me get her back. Family cottage. Yeah.
We're going to ask the family to return to the tent for our closing prayers. Now continue first with the memorial prayer in Hebrew and English, and then we'll say the Kaddish together. El amarei rachamim shochein b'mromim ametzemenu kanachonat tachat kanfei hashechina v'malot kiroshim atorim kezorakia masirim enishmat Elaine bat Kalapatama Shachal Olama V'ganiden Temenukata Anna Barakhamim Astile B'sedek Nefekali Olamim Utrebat Shachai Menishmato Adonai Onachalata V'tanak B'shalom Amishkava V'namar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of our beloved Elaine Janet Reider, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that a loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May she merit the reward for living a life with kindness and love. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And we say, Amen. At this point, we're going to ask for the family to rise for the mourner's Kaddish, the mourner's prayer. Yit kadal v'yit kadash shemei rabba v'yalma divrach hirute v'yamlik malchute v'chayechon uvyomechon uvakaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman karib v'yamru Amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach v'yalam olamei omaya yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yitkomam v'yitaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tishbekata v'nechamata da'amiran v'yalama v'yamru Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya V'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yamru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yamru Amen. Following the service, the family will be gathering at Beachmont Country Club today until 5, and then resuming Shiva tonight at 7 to 9 p.m. The family asks those who would like to contribute in Elaine's name may do so at the Trust Bridge Hospice of Palm Beach for the Cleveland Indians Charities. May this family only find love. May wonderful memories of Elaine, of Grandma, fill all of your hearts, give you strength, and we say Amen. This concludes our service.
Need a hand? One day at a time.
I can do it with two.
That's okay.
Not
I understand.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem. It's what I'm here for.